and welcome to Hot Issues. This week, we are talking about the new patriotic party, the largest opposition party in the country, the party that says that it is in waiting and ready to form the next government. We're talking about the fortunes of the party, the strategy of the party for the next election. We'll be talking about policy issues. I'll be talking about all the other issues that have been raised about the new patriotic party. Welcome to Hot Issues. Hello, welcome back to Hot Issues. And as I indicated earlier, we are talking about the new patriotic party. We are talking about its strategy for the next elections. We are talking about its policies. We are talking about its assessment of the current administration and many more. And guess what? We are particularly fortunate to have the General Secretary of the party, Mr. Kwabena Agyepong, with us in the studio. Sir, you're welcome to the studio.
It's a pleasure. It's been a long time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, what is the state of your party?
Well, I think I can say with a lot of conviction that it's in a very healthy state. I mean, if you watch the demonstration that we orchestrated last week, it goes to show you that we are in touch with the grassroots of the party and we feel the heartbeat of Ghanaians. And Ghanaians have faith in us, that we are a party that is a government in waiting and that we are capable of delivering on our promises when we make them, because they've felt us not too long ago. We were in power between 2001 and 2009, and considering the 6 years of the NDC, I'm sure people are beginning to realize that the MPP are always better managers of our economy, and I'm sure everybody is hopeful that 2016 we will be able to win the elections. We want to be a practical leadership, the new administration that we have in our party, to work to strengthen the party at the localities. Borrowing something from Dr. Nkrumah's many maxims, that organization decides everything. And we believe that all politics is local, and that if we make the resources that our local organizations need, make it available to them early, and we give them the right direction, I'm very confident that any day we can win this election. Our political party, Kwesi, is founded on certain values. It was fashioned out of adversity, you recall, in 1991, 1992, under military dictatorship. And in those days, if you were not courageous and not prepared to sacrifice, you could not rear your head and say you were MPP. So this is a tradition that was fashioned out of adversity. And it was founded on the principles of the 3 S's, as I normally put them: sacrifice, service, and selflessness. And a dedicated core of people who were prepared to die for the tradition and contribute something to our tradition. It's that spirit that I believe has gone down significantly, and that's what we want to revive. We want to use this year 2015 as a year of rejuvenation of our party base, for them to be able to die a little for the party, for our party activists to be prepared to sacrifice and work for this party, and by so doing work for the country Ghana. So I'm happy to report that, having gone through all the elections at our polling stations, we have over 26,000 polling stations, we have 5 executives in place, we had over 6,000 electoral area coordinators in place. We had elections in 275 constituencies, of course, albeit about 7 or so are still having legal issues. Successful elections in 10 regional elections. We have regional executives in place, and the almighty election in Tamale that brought forth our current national leadership with me as General Secretary. And since then, we've been able to stage a 2-stage presidential primary, which gave a massive endorsement to our 2012 candidate, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. So internally, I can say that this is a party that has achieved more than most. Not even the ruling government has come this far in our internal political arrangement, which satisfies what the Constitution dictates to us. So right now, the next hurdle is to be able to navigate the selection of our parliamentary candidates. It can be very dodgy, but we hope that with goodwill, honesty, being forthright and frank, We want to be able to select winnable candidates that will give us a solid platform on which to build our campaign for 2016. So we are ready.
But now that all the parties are offering free education,
I didn't say that is going to be the main.
Yeah, but one of the policies,
definitely. Yeah. I mean, but of course, political leadership is about vision. It's about seeing into the future, and it's not for nothing that our candidate, as far back as 2008, had this drive because he believes that Ghanaians deserve it. And you and I know, Kwesi, the only way to fight poverty is through education. I mean, if you happen to be lucky to have a family that is resourceful, you don't need education to survive. But some of us, it's because of education that we find ourselves where we are. So the importance of education is paramount. And that's why I believe the Constitution is there. But it required the drive of a political leadership of Akufo-Addo to bring it to the fore of national discussion. And I think it's something that is still dear to his heart. But I'm sure to be part of a whole range of issues that he will bring to the fore come 2016.
In 2000, the CPP offered that and didn't win an election.
Well, you said in your introduction that we are a very big party. I think we are the biggest party in this country, membership-wise. There's no doubt at all about that. But of course, we know that there have been some shortcomings, and that's why, as a party leadership, we want to work on that. Many times, the likes of yourself have accused us of being not in touch with the grassroots. But as I said last week, we were able to show that we are in touch with the ordinary people, and that we feel their frustration, and that what they have gone through, especially in this difficult crisis that we have as a country. As a political leadership, we thought it was incumbent on us to be able to aggregate their frustrations and express it. And that alone should tell you that we are in touch. In fact, Kwesi, without being overly optimistic, we have the best structure. The MPP has a structure right down to the polling station. And the polling station is the basic unit of political activity in our country. There are very few countries where in the world where you have an electoral college of close to 140,000 people deciding on who becomes the leader of a political party. So I think it is for us now to be more practical, to be humble and honest enough to admit our shortcomings and then work hard to show that up. Once our local machinery is well oiled, I'm very confident that we'll prosecute an effective and an efficient campaign. We have a candidate whose name is known all over, so we have to make sure that we insert his visibility in every hamlet in this country, and that's what we intend to do.
But sir, you had all of this before the last elections. The visibility of the candidate, your structure.
Not entirely true. I mean, I'm not here to openly discuss our strategies, but there were areas that, in fact, I personally took a trip. I'll mention those areas. And there were areas that I think strategically we let go. And I think it did not help us at all. And I believe that every inch of territory in this country is worth fighting for. And our view, especially in our weakest region, like the Volta region, is to be able to work hard enough to win the confidence of the people of the Volta region, to be able to at least attract 30% of the vote. And we were improving from 1992, but it's stagnated a bit. And I think with a more direct response and engagement of the people, interacting with the people, they'll begin to appreciate what we stand for. Because I'm sure some of them, in their own quiet moods of reflection, will recognize that the Kufuor administration, the MPP, did more for them, especially the poor people in this country, than what we are seeing with the Mahama administration. So it's a way of strategizing. We know we have a challenge, and we recognize that challenge to get in there, sit with the people of the region, and let them feel, take them through the history. In fact, they have a history with this political tradition, the likes of Modesto, Apollo, SG, Anto, and many others. So it is territory that we are going to fight for and claim. And also the long-held, propaganda that has been thrown at us about the nature of our party. Everybody knows that when it was consummated, if you go back to our predecessor party like the United Party, the Northern People's Party had a major role to play in that. The likes of Jatokaleo, BK, Adama, Chief Dombo, Alhaji Moro Salifu, Alhaji Adama Mandi, and many others, J. Brima, Alhaji Tolona, Yakubu Tali, and our own recently passed first Vice President of first Muslim Vice President of the country, Alhaji Aliyu Mahama, may his soul rest in peace. So we are determined to reclaim that heritage, to let them feel that this is their tradition. In fact, they own this tradition and the sacrifices that their forefathers made. Because in that aggregation of forces that made Buzia the leader, if they just looked at the numbers, I would have thought that perhaps Dumbo should have been the leader. But he took the ultimate sacrifice. The selflessness that we talk about, he just had the belief that perhaps we needed Buzia at the time. That is the kind of selflessness that we need in our country today. That people are prepared to sacrifice their own personal aggrandizement for the collective good. And it's something that we as a young people who know the history of our political tradition live by it. And we have to make sure that we can push it down generations unborn. So that I'm worried about politics in this country right now. Because I sense, and sometimes it's down to the politicking between ourselves. And if you recollect, when I spoke at the Congress of the NDC, I said to them that the interaction between ourselves is degenerating. And there should be respect of our cultural values, respect for political authority and the elders of the nation and our party, no matter whether we are in government or in opposition. If we don't do so, we erode the confidence that people must have in political administrations. And Kwesi, once that is lost, we don't have a nation. And we know what has happened around us, that we should not think that we are insulated from that. So the discourse has to be elevated, it has to be serious, it has to be about issues that will help our country develop, issues that will satisfy the millions of our Ghanaians who are long suffering. And I'm really passionate about that. And sometimes when I listen to the radio, some of our own communicators, the way they talk, the way they speak, the way they describe our president, I've said it and I want to repeat it here. The president remains the president of our country. And whilst we believe that his handling of the economy has been incompetent and many things have happened, they haven't shown sensitivity to the plight of Ghanaians, and in fact they've shown an uncaring attitude. But we should not be making personal and insulting attacks on the leaders of our country. It's not right, and we have to build that as part of our psyche, and we want to encourage our people to desist from that kind of attitude. There are many issues that we can talk about politically, and I'm sure we'll get to that, that will place the MPP in a strong position to attract votes from around the country. And that's what we should be focused on. And that's what, as General Secretary, together with my National Executive, will be working hard to achieve in the months leading up to the election in 2016.
Now, sir, you have been known as one of the strategists of the party, especially when it comes to electioneering and so on.
Right.
What is wrong? You have moved from winning 6 regions to 2 regions. What would account for that?
I think in 2008, in fact, if you look at the elections, Nana Akufo-Addo led Professor Mills by over 100,000 votes in the first round. That's a significant margin of lead. Had it not been the fact that we had performed poorly at the parliamentary elections, there was no way Professor Mills would have overturned that victory. What happened was we had become complacent after being in office for 8 years. There's a lot of petty bickering at the local level. The specter of independent candidates came to haunt us. Even in some of our strongholds, we lost. Salaga, I believe even Yendi, in 2008, in Koko, Bekwai, these Wulensi, because of internal bickering, we lost it. So it gave the NDC the capacity to ride on a certain momentum Because Ghanaians have never been used to a president with a minority in parliament. So for them, just go and tell the people we've won the parliamentary election, you need a president who can work. And that carried the day. Albeit a very small margin. Well, between 23,000 or 40,000, depending on which result you are sticking to. All I'm trying to say is we as a political party has to focus on our internal dispute resolution mechanisms. And that our party people, if you're a true patriot of our party, we have far too many cases in court. Issues that, we can sit and dialogue over. In politics, I have said it before and I want to repeat, we don't lock our feet in concrete. In politics, you have to be flexible. You have to shift positions, especially for the collective good of the party. If you think you are a patriot, and in any election, there will be a winner and a loser. And so, when there are political primaries, it's the way we conduct the primaries. It's the way those who are in charge of the primaries, be it at the constituency level or at the national level, are perceived by the electorate, our party people, the activists, to be even-handed, fair, reasonable, and objective in the resolution of the conflicts that may arise. That is very important to win the confidence, so that when national or at the regional level there is an intervention, people will feel that this is a genuine intervention, and that if he has lost out as a result of some arrangement, he truly believes that he lost out in the collective interest. Once they begin to feel that they have been treated unfairly, our party people, very strong-headed with democratic credentials, then they will rush off, and then we'll have a lot of those issues. So I know that even in the first round of 2000, when Mr. Kufuor was in the handsome lead, he won in 4 regions. The way the country is structured is always going to be tough for us. But even with 2 regions, Akufo-Addo lost only marginally. It means that if we strategize, and of course, Chrissy, I don't think you expect me to tell you the details of the strategy here. If we strategize well and get back some support, I think the Volta region is critical.
Yeah, but Kwabena, the point I'm making is that even as Nana Akufo-Addo was leading by whatever, 100,000 votes and so on, NPP had lost in 4 regions, in addition to 2 other regions that it traditionally has been losing to.
But I'm saying that, in fact, if you look at the 2012 elections, is it not significant that if you look at the cumulative of those who voted for our 123 minority MPs, it's still far more than those who voted for the over 150 or so NDC MPs. It's because of the way the configuration. In fact, we think, many in this country feel, the way the constituencies are configured is loaded against not only our political party, but against the very principle of representation of the people. Representation of the people. I think areas are overly represented, whilst other areas are not well represented. There are some MPs who represent 80,000 people, whilst others represent 12,000 people. I think as a nation, we have to have a bipartisan discussion. I don't support this talk about increasing the number of MPs. I think a country like Ghana can do with 200. In Britain, they have a fixed figure, and then as the population migrates, they redraw the boundaries to still retain that fixed figure. So if it is that we are going to end up at 275, or we're going to go back to 250, or even to 200, we can sit down in a bipartisan way. And Electoral Commission should do it, with a view to respecting the constitution of our party. It talks about the people's representation being the biggest weight. Of course, there's the issue about geography and all that kind of thing, but the weight that we put on that is much smaller than people's representation. So of course there will be areas that will still be underrepresented, but at least we should bridge the gap. And that is
how are we going to do that bridging? That's the critical question.
Well, as you see, since 1992, Kwesi, there has been an increased maturity, albeit a lot of issues have cropped up, but increased collaboration with minority parties. We are working better at IPAC. I think we are reducing the mistrust. And I quite recall when I became General Secretary, and the Electoral Commission was forging ahead with the limited registration when they hadn't had an IPAC meeting. I spoke to the General Secretary of the NDC, Seydou Nketia. I spoke to Ivor Greenstreet. I spoke to Bernard Mona. I spoke to the PPP. And using the platform of IEA for General Secretaries, we quickly put together a draft, but they all signed up to it. And then we were able to get the Electoral Commission to call an emergency IPAC that allowed the 1 month postponement and all those things to go on. So there can be collaboration, and we have to aim at collaborating. I think that is very important. Of course, all political parties want to win power, but the national interest should prevail. And I think if you make the recommendation or the reforms that we have submitted, for instance, and if you look at it and you critiqued it, and we're dispatching it to all the political parties, we've updated it, because now the last one that we sent, well, because it was done in a hurry, it didn't have the endorsement of the national executive of our party. It's now we have an endorsed one, signed properly, which has been dispatched to
the political parties.
I think,
or to the Electoral Commission.
The Electoral Commission has been dispatched.
Hello and welcome back to Hot Issues, and we are in conversation with Mr. Kwabena Agyepong, the General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party. And we are looking at many things about the party, its strategy for the next elections. Even though he would not open up enough, we are still trying to look at the strategy of the party for the next elections, its policies, reforms, and so on. Now, sir, just before we went on the break, you had begun talking about reforms. What reforms have you submitted to the Electoral Commission?
Well, Chrissy, before I even get to the fact of what reforms, I think it is noteworthy to recall that the last two elections have really pulled us to the brink. I'm sure you've taken a look of this famous African elections movie, that documentary or movie, whatever way you may call it. And then in 2012, what really transpired, and that the country was really at the brink. It's all because increasingly, whether it's the NDC or the MPP or the general populace, there is some apprehension about the neutrality and the competence of the commission that should pilot the process. And so, as much as possible, if we can work hard to increase public trust and confidence in the process, is very important. Where are the bottlenecks? Again, the Supreme Court ruling, even the comments that the judges made were pointing in that direction. So many things were exposed in the course of those 8 months of trial. For instance, the chairman of the commission admitted that the register was flawed. In fact, before the election itself, I quite recall the Daily Graphic banner headline with some pictures of minors who were on the register, where everybody saw. The Ghanaian would know who a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old was. Those were clearly minors who were captured in the register. Now, the fact that because they were captured, it was going to be difficult to stop them from voting. And that is a recipe for violence and chaos. So clearly, such people have to be taken out of the register. Again, it was difficult to tell which register we were talking about. There was a register that amounted to 13.9 million plus. There was another register that was 14 point something million. And if you looked at the one used for parliamentary and presidential, there were discrepancies. The Electoral Commission themselves could not tell us which was the register. And then there was all the issue of the registrations, as the foreign votes or something, that the Electoral Commission first talked about a figure of around 270,000, and then when it was they were put to it, it was about 1,000 or 700. All these things create a certain level of distrust, and we as a political party want to work hard for the public body like the Electoral Commission to regain the trust of all of us, so that when elections are declared, the one who has lost really generally believes that he could not garner the necessary votes to win. But
some of the problems you describe have been with us from 1992.
Yes, but
problems with register and so on. They've been with us throughout all the elections.
But Chrissy, I don't think that because there are problems they should continue to be.
Agree.
We should work hard and improve. Because you know that in 1992, you and I were in the trenches in 1992. There were no rules for agents and declarations, and everybody just waited for the Electoral Commission to just run up at the Independence Square and write anything there. And we just accepted it, and that's attributed to the writing of the stolen verdict. Then we moved on and said, look, we don't even like these opaque, what do you call them?
Ballot boxes.
The ballot boxes. Now it's transparent, so you can see through. Improvements have been made. I quite recall even in 2000, the ID cards. Not all the people in the country had photo IDs. The rural areas were still using thumbprint. Certain areas were using photo IDs. And so we are moving on. Now we have biometric verification devices. And so therefore, continuously, I know that people keep saying there's never going to be a perfect election. It may be so, but we have to strive for perfection, or at least to a point where all of us will be reasonably confident that it is the will of the people that has been declared, and that those who count don't matter more than those who vote. That has to be the key. And so the reform is one. Everybody looked at the complexity of the pink sheet. And so the reform tries to address that so that we can reduce the... there are certain things that are known that should not be filled in by a presiding officer. The number of people at a polling station are known in the register. So why don't you have it embossed on before the elections? There are certain things. So those are part of the recommendations. I'm happy to report that the Electoral Commission, at least so far, have been very positive in their reaction to some of the recommendations that we've made, and which is in sync with a lot of other recommendations. I've seen the NDC ones, the PNC ones. All of us believe that, look, let's try and do things right. For instance, it's not right for the Electoral Commission behind us or subtly recruit people when we don't know. You understand? It creates room for suspicion. If you want to employ temporary staff, make it public, inform the parties, let it be open. You are there and you hear, they are recruiting people for the district level elections, or are they the ones going to be used for the general election? And then, it throws a surprise at you. That cannot be something that we should continue to do. It's part of the reforms. And we have tried to concentrate on the things that we can achieve before 2016. So mostly the administrative things that changes can be made. The critical thing is the collation center, because if you listen to the court case, it got
at the polling station at the
collation constituency level.
Yeah,
because that is where you aggregate all the polling station results, and that's where a lot of hanky-panky goes on. You recall what happened in Ablekuma North when the NDC candidate Ras Mubarak was declaring his own result, and and then in Kwabena, had it not been the meticulousness of the candidate and her team, then things could have happened. So now the Electoral Commission themselves appears to have agreed to that, the fact that every party needs a copy of that collation sheet, the one that has all the polling stations listed by code and by name. In fact, the Electoral Commission is even moving further, say that this time they may in fact appoint a collation agent aside of the presiding officer, because presiding officer has a lot of work to do from the morning of the election, making sure the materials are in the various parts of the polling stations and coordinating. Sometimes by the time of the counting they are tired, and when it gets to the collation, the human error can set in. So it may be a wise decision. So we are all working towards. And then also the law in fact states that at the declaration at the constituency level, it should be physically available. The Electoral Commission has indicated they are more disposed to mounting what do you call these things, projectors, using projectors. Some people want to go down to basics, perhaps even use a blackboard and write it, so that anybody who walks in would know that this polling station result, as recorded, is what was declared in that polling station. Because in times past, it's only the presiding officer.
Couldn't there be a problem with the parties themselves and the training of their agents and so on? Couldn't the caliber of their agents?
That is a major problem. In fact, that is a major problem. As General Secretary on my visits, I mean, sometimes I'll mention the constituencies, even during the limited registration and the exercise when we were doing the exhibition. You go and find an agent, and if you look at the agent, you yourself, you know you are shuddering, because you know that this agent is not literate enough, is not numerate enough. So we are putting together a volunteer corps. We're calling it V16, Volunteers for 2016. We want to build a corps of 50,000 people who are literate, who are knowledgeable, who are dedicated patriots, and who we are. Don't let me get you all the details that we.
Yeah, but these are details which are not harmful.
They are not harmful, though. But so basically, we want to make sure that at every polling station in this country, we have competent people who can at least monitor the process, report accurately for the party, and be strong enough to understand the CI 71 and the electoral regulations, and be able to play the role that they are expected to play as polling agents, not just as elevated observers. They have a role to play. And sometimes, because they are not well schooled, and it takes a lot of money to train people. I'm just checking the budget for this year, and you see it's huge. Political parties are under a lot of strain. Even however resourceful you may be, if you're having to train over 50,000 people in these things, it's not an easy assignment. And so, yes, that is a major shortcoming, and it's something that we have recognized as a party. We want to be practical about it. Sometimes, because someone is the elected polling station executive, and then when you try to insert somebody who knows the process to become the polling agent on the day, trouble. Yeah. So, but we have to begin to school them. That look, yes, you are the elected polling station executive. You don't necessarily have to man the polling booth on the day. You are part of the arrangement of the day. Perhaps you have to go and get out the vote.
But it comes to some stipend.
I don't want to talk about that. But that stipend
it is not for free. It comes to some stipend.
Well, it is. I don't think the word stipend is not one that I will share. I think it's our modest appreciation of the sacrifices people make. Because if you're going to spend the whole day and expose yourself to threats and all that, I don't think a 10 cedis is enough.
Maybe in an urban area like Accra.
Accra, yes.
But in some of the villages, 10 cedis is a lot of money.
I know, but we don't want people to, dedicate themselves based on the fact that they're going to get a stipend. That's why we talk about selflessness. We need a dedicated core of people who are prepared to sacrifice, and when I say die in quotes, for our party, who are prepared to serve our party. And if you are a true patriot, and I know that this whole thing started as a voluntary thing, and when people started cooking for people, but now it's become almost institutionalized.
Sure.
Because every one of us, on the day of election, if that was not the day of election, you will find food to eat in your home or somehow, but you are sacrificing to sit there and serve the party. It's the people around feel that, let's cook and go and give, because he's sacrificing for us. Now it's become almost centrally controlled. You have to provide food for all the 20. In fact, if you multiply that by 56,000 plus people, and if you try to centrally control that, it becomes very expensive.
But you used to be in the strong room for 48 hours without food, without anybody giving you food or anything.
That's right. Yeah. You remember that?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
In 96 we were together. And then 2000. I mean, that is the kind of voluntarism that we want to revive in our country. That spirit of working for your party and working for our country. And I've been intensely passionate about that. In those days, I never asked anybody anything. And those days were dangerous. I remember in 96 with all the armored cars and the military presence and all that, people were scared even to enter the Electoral Commission. But we decided that we'll sacrifice and go and do it. And I didn't ask the party to feed me or to give me a stipend or anything. We did it, and it came naturally. As I said, this party was fashioned out of adversity, and it took many people lost their lives. People ran into exile. People's businesses collapsed. Others died in exile. And so that's why our party has such a strong spiritual, backing. And
is that spirit still there? I'm not so sure.
Well, we have to be honest to say that spirit of voluntarism has ebbed a lot. And it is the duty of our collective duty, by leading by example, to revive that. And I think it's getting there. I mean, the reaction to this demonstration shows that. I mean, people came out of their free will. They listened to the messages that we put across. That they should come, sacrifice for the party. If you are a true patriot, even if you are not a member of our party, and you are negatively impacted by what is going on, we need to have a society that is passionate about our country. And we can only so do that by being passionate about our party and extending it to our country. And I think leadership, we need focused, dedicated leadership who are prepared to volunteer themselves. And once you do so, then it is easier for the masses, the activists, to also deny themselves and follow you once they have a trust and belief that in fact you are sacrificing for them. I mean, there are other things that I think, in fact, as political parties we should think about. The issue of even the number of ministries that run in our country. I've never felt that we should have more than 20 ministries. And that different time governments change designations. Today there's power. In our time there was orientation. I think that we should standardize it, so that every government knows that we are going to run the country with 20 ministries. If it is energy, it's energy. If we think it's too big and now it is power and petroleum, okay. There used to be fuel and power, and then it changes to water resources, works and housing, then it's works and housing, then it's transport, then there's roads and highways, then there's aviation. I think that as a country, some of these things, we the politicians should sit around and let's get serious. This country, 25 million, let's say 30 million people in the next 2 or 3 years, we are projecting that. That country should be, we can supervise it with 20 ministries if we properly look at it, consolidate some of it, and rebuild the public service and make it professional and not overly politicize the public services. It's very key.
But there's a problem. I mean, each time any of you is in opposition, you talk about the size of government. Each time you get into government, all of you come with the same size or bigger sizes.
I don't think it's a problem. The NDC, this is NDC 2, if I may say. I mean, yes, we have had one.
Yeah, but you've been in opposition before and
yes,
you've been in government before.
We've had one. So hopefully, hopefully, I mean, I think there are things that as we grow and move on, we should have the capacity to change. This is something I feel passionately about. And I'll discuss it with any future government that the MPP heads, that we cannot continue to do that. We have a country of 100 ministers. I think is a waste. We should cut down the waste in this country. There's too much waste in our public systems. Too much of it. And if we, the politicians, don't lead and cut down the waste, who will do it for us? I mean, for instance,
the problem now is that sometimes it's very difficult for the electorate to believe you. You understand?
Well,
because of the conduct of the two major political parties, they always say
I don't think if you make it a political issue, if you try to make it an issue that you think you are going to win votes with, then maybe they can look at that. I don't think this, for me, is something that should be a campaign issue. This is a serious issue. Look, as a government, as political parties, how do we see running the government machinery? We've done it before, they've done it, they are in power now. Let's look at it. This chopping and changing, is it useful? Let's have a bipartisan approach so it doesn't become political. Okay? Because there are a lot of things that I used to tell our friends in opposition that they should be worried about. They kept counting every time President Kufuor jumped into a plane. Today, John Mahama, I'm sure, is traveling far more frequently. But that's the way the world goes these days. If you watch the news, the American president is in Israel today, the next day is in Korea. It's part of diplomacy. But because they shot themselves in the foot, counting.
And President Kufuor was called a visiting president.
Yes. You know, he was called that by the NDC, and I quite remember telling us when he called us thieves. I said to you, first and foremost, I know that none of us is a thief. Otherwise, by now, in their 6 years, we would have been in jail. But once you do so for political expediency, what you do is you denigrate politicians in the eyes of the people.
But today, your people are also calling them thieves.
It is wrong. I have said, it is wrong. I have seen people even go out of the country when a president is on an international assignment, is representing our country. Yes, sometimes you can have protests. Fine. But we should be very careful about these things. We should be very careful about these things. I don't want to see President Akufo-Addo attacked like that when he becomes president. So those of us in our party who think that by doing so they are doing something, they should think twice. And when I say so, I get some attacks from inside. But
you're an NDC man.
I don't want to dignify that with a response because everybody knows my.
No, I was actually going to ask you one question. You understand? And because it would look strange if I don't ask that question. And the allegation from your own party that you have been working for the NDC and you've been rewarded with a car. I think it's childish.
I think it's
it's coming from your own party.
It's so insulting. And the question I ask, but when I was going to Tamale, you all know what happened. Exactly. Had it not been the grace of the Almighty, I would be dead. I had an accident. I was not driving in a Tico. I was driving in a V8. So if I replace it, it's something I've used before. While anybody can think that somebody bought it for me. Yesterday I got a call from the company. I've not finished paying. I got a call yesterday, and I still owe them. Yesterday I got a call. Strangely, whether they were trying to drag my feet or not. But some of these things, you see, in politics, you get a lot of things happening that should not be happening, especially when it's coming from people who should know better. And there are certain things sometimes you don't even want to dignify with a response because it is so low. And I want us to elevate the discourse in this country. You know, even when I was a young man, I wouldn't do such a thing. Not when I'm matured.
When you were Kala.
When I say young man, I wouldn't do that. in the 90s, I remember in 1998, 99, when I was holding press conferences, putting pressure on the former president at the time, Rawlings,
Hello and welcome to Hot Issues, and we are privileged to have with us in the studio the General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party. I've been talking about prospects of the party, we've been talking about reforms in the electoral process, and we've even spoken about the strategy of the party going into the 2016 elections. Now, sir, would you tell us what difficulties you expect?
Talking about difficulties,
for example, you're going to choose your parliamentary candidates.
Well, those are things we've gone through before. For me, it is not a big deal. But the bigger difficulty facing our country is economic management, because this government quite clearly has been incompetent in the handling of our economy. There's no doubt.
Why do you say so?
I'm saying so because if you look at the amount of resources that has been available to this government, never in our history. If you look at the public debt right now, 78 billion, if you share it across the 25 million Ghanaians, 3,000 per head. That is what we
But is that how to look at it? Why don't you look at it in terms of the projects that they're being spent on and the viability of the projects?
I can tell you, I've done a comparison of that. It doesn't add up. Figures don't add up. Ghanaians are not getting value for money. In fact, this government has been very, very lucky. If you look at our exports, the major exports like gold and cocoa, over the period, if you average the prices between 2009 and 2014, much, much better than what we saw in 2001 to 2009. So they've had handsome receipts. What has happened to the money? And they still are behind on statutory payments. This is the only government that has had oil revenue.
Donor support has not been coming. You had a lot of donor support. They are not getting any donor support.
Kwesi, first and foremost, you control what you control. You understand? You've borrowed close to 30 billion in 6 years, more than 4 times what we borrowed in our 8 years, and that is a fact. And it's poor management that has ensured that our CD has moved from 1 CD 20 pesos to $1 to now 3 CDs 40 pesos to $1. So that today, if you want to go and procure 1 gallon of light crude to come and power your thermal plants in Abuazi, you are having to mobilize more local resources for the same amount. And that is down to incompetent handling of the economy. And the current power crisis is only a symptom. I keep saying, is a symptom of a deeper malaise that has beset this administration. And that is what we face. I mean, it's difficult to understand how much money we have gotten from our oil revenue. And to the extent that the GMPC can tell Ghanaians in the face that they've used $65 million for capacity building in 2012 election year, because we are not kids. So the whole thing is about the mismanagement of our economy. And even if you look at revenue, industry experts say that we are collecting perhaps only 30% of what we should be getting from Tema, Harbour, and Takoradi. There's deep-seated corruption there. Meanwhile, there are so many state agencies duplicating the work of each other. I think we should simplify it and read them the Route Act. If the customs can't do it, you fire them. Governments, presidents are put in office to take decisions to solve problems, not to talk about it.
So finally, I mean, it has been said,
yes,
that the utterances of some of your leading figures have alienated many people from your party. How are you going to deal with that problem going into 2016?
First and foremost, I have said, and I'll repeat here, party discipline is critical. The party has a code of discipline. If you bring the name of the party into disrepute, you can be subject to sanction by the party. The party has a record. The party has values. Some of these irresponsible statements that have happened, it's not mainstream party. And I want that very clear. It's not mainstream party.
Are you going to be able to effect discipline?
Definitely. I mean, without discipline, you can't achieve anything.
But even in your era, there has been cases of indiscipline.
There has been.
And the public does not see any manifestation of strong disciplinary action.
I think if they are patient enough, they would. A lot of things, it took us time to get some of our standing committees in place. Now they are in place. Some of these issues have been turned over. The disciplinary committee works behind the scenes very quiet, but they are very competent people, mature people, who will look at our collective interest. But I want to caution members of our party, be they elders or leaders or constituency activists, to be very, very watchful of what they say.
There are very few people messing you up.
Very watchful of what they say, because the full force of the party's sanction can be brought to bear. We cannot continue to suffer these things. Of course, the government and the NDC are glad to over-exaggerate some of these things when they even know that it is not mainstream. Well, every party.
But wouldn't you have exaggerated?
No.
It's all the statements
there are many. In fact, compare it to the presidential candidate Mills, who said in Gumwa, Mumford, in the full view of the whole country, accusing Kufuor that because he's from Habem, from the forest, he's allowed the coal stores to die. That was a very ethnocentric statement coming from
Are you going to compare that to what Mr. Safumafu, for example, is supposed to have said?
What I'm trying to say here is a bad statement is a bad statement. And I would never glorify bad statements. We want the sanctity of our country. We have to be able to celebrate our diversity. And this country is a diverse people, but we remain Ghanaians first. And I do think that if you're a true patriot of our party, your sentiments, the things that you put out as a political leader, are things that you bring us together. We have to emphasize the things that hold us together rather than the things that divide us. And most often than not, I think the NDC tends to overplay the things that divide us. And I think it's not good for our country. They may reap some political benefit, but it's not good for our country.
Well said. Thank you very much
for
coming. Thank you very,
Hope
very
to see you
much
again.
for coming.
It's a pleasure.
Well, we've been listening to Mr. Kwabena Agyepong, General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party, indeed the largest opposition party in the country. He claims that his party is the biggest party in Ghana, maybe in the world. But I've enjoyed every bit of it, and I hope that all of us have learned a few things more about the New Patriotic Party. You can only get this on TV3. We bring you the best in sports, the best in entertainment, best in news, and best in everything. So keep your dial here until we meet again next week. It's goodbye from all of us from TV3.